The Silver Surfer is unlike any other character in the Marvel Universe. Whereas hundreds of superheroes all inhabit neighboring blocks in New York, the Silver Sentinel of the Starways is light years away, pondering. It's this detachment from humanity, the very thing he protects, that makes him so absolutely captivating. His tortured past and unending future means he is constantly asking questions about humanity, self, and valor. The Silver Surfer is the reader's philosophical wormhole into the Marvel cosmos, a stand-in for both the reader and writer. In 1966, Jack Kirby added the Silver Surfer into Fantastic Four number 48, unbeknownst to his partner Stan Lee. They were introducing the alien world eater Galactus, and Kirby was tired of drawing boring old spaceships. And let's be honest, what could be cooler than a guy flying through space on a surfboard named Rad? Norrin Rad, that is. However, initially he was nameless. Usually Kirby and Lee would work out stories together beforehand. Kirby would draw them, and then Lee would add the dialogue afterwards, known as the Marvel Method. When Lee first saw the character, he wanted him erased. There, in the middle of the story we had so carefully worked out, was some nut on some sort of flying surfboard. Okay, said I, ever calm and reasonable, ever willing to give the other guy the benefit of the doubt. Obviously your mind was wandering when you drew this irrelevant little bit of whimsy. How long will it take you to erase it? Little did Lee know that this, quote, irrelevant little bit of whimsy would become one of his favorite characters. Since this chrome cruiser wasn't initially planned to be in the story, Lee didn't really know what to write for him. He was a blank slate except for Kirby's explanation that the newly introduced Galactus should create beings out of pure power to find planets suitable for eating.
You are newborn, my herald. Even your mind is a new page on which I shall write. Arise!
Lee states in the pages of Ultimate Silver Surfer, well, the more I looked at the figure on the flying board, the more I liked him. But I realized something that perhaps Jack himself hadn't even been fully aware of. I detected a nobility in the way Jack had drawn him, a feeling of worthiness, of goodness, of, I might as well say it, of spirituality. As drawn by the genius of Jack Kirby, he was far more than merely some goofy stooge for the main supervillain. To me, he was honor and virtue personified, and that was the way I knew I had to write him. And despite seeming devoid of human emotion, the Surfer soon turned against his master in defense of the human race as written by Lee. Even though Kirby had originally created the character and already started drawing his own origin story for him, Lee went off and created his own Surfer series with John Buscema, practically hijacking Kirby's own character. Creative differences like this are why Kirby left for DC Comics in 1971, but the two men eventually got over their differences and decided to reunite and rewrite the Surfer's origin in the Silver Surfer, the ultimate cosmic experience. Now, from my understanding, this is the very first original Marvel graphic novel ever, due to a licensing agreement Marvel had with Fireside Books. Now, before Lee had ever written comics, he was Stanley Lieber and used his pen name because he was embarrassed by the reputation comics had. Today, graphic novels are the go-to term when we're talking about comics in an academic light, so it's fitting that the character whom Kirby and Lee reunited for would bridge the gap between a changing medium and a changing perception of comics as art. After the Fantastic Four initially repelled Galactus with the Surfer, Norrin was punished by his former master and exiled.
And of course the Silver Surfer is the fallen angel. And when Galactus relegated him to Earth, he stayed on Earth. And that was the beginning of his adventures. And they were figures that had never before been used in comics. They were above mythic figures. And of course, they were the first gods.
Galactus then consumed Zenala, but gave its residents enough time to escape. And thus, the Surfer was left with no home, forced to wander the universe alone and continue to try to reclaim his lost humanity. As our reflective writer witnesses the marvels of wondrous worlds, there is still a deep sadness for what he could not save. There are just so many beautiful panels of the surfer with his board, alone in the vastness of galaxies.
He is disconnected, simultaneously attuned to the power cosmic, yet out of phase with the rest of reality.
The surfer's dark past means he's detached, but also forever repentant and trying to make up for his role in the death of countless worlds. So, like any good reader or writer, Norrin is constantly wondering.
Lee and many others have been able to give their own philosophical takes throughout the various Silver Surfer comics written, an outlet for all of humanity's questions. One of Lee's most masterful works is Silver Surfer Parable, beautifully drawn and lettered by renowned French artist Moebius, aka Jean Giraud, known for his depictions of wondrous and strange worlds, from Alien to Edenia.
When Parable's first issue begins, Rad is completely devoid of hope for humanity. "I have no compassion for them. All their wounds are self-inflicted," he says. However, when his former master Galactus once again shows himself on Earth, the surfer rushes to confront him, reminding the Planet Eater of his vow never to return to Earth. Norrin rushes to defend humankind because he has an inherent love and compassion for life, and despite the fact that he's lost hope, he still wishes to save it. He believes humanity can be redeemed.
Moebius says of the story, "The story reflects a deep, very personal vision, that of a man who obviously feels quite pessimistic about the world, and yet is able to temper that vision with idealism and hope. I think a lot of these themes, loneliness, lack of understanding, fight for the truth, are deeply connected to Stan's life."
Soon, Galactus' reckless actions cause a girder to fall directly above a man who was just shooting at the surfer moments ago. And yet, our chivalrous knight in shining aura still saves the man. This is the epitome of selflessness, saving those who would wish you harm and death. At the end of Parable, once the surfer has driven Galactus away from Earth, humanity wants Rad to lead them. Hell, I'd vote for him.
Serving USA.
Rad thinks to himself, why cannot they realize that the truest faith is faith in oneself? What has made them so desperate to have others show them the way? There's only one way to teach them, though it will mean becoming an outcast yet again. And yet, it is a small enough price to pay. The surfer goes on to tell the humans he would require complete and utter subservience as their leader, in order to drive them away from blind faith and to teach them a lesson.
It works, and the human characters say things like,
"Hanging's too good for him! Burning's too good for him!"
I have to assume that's a reference to the heavy metal movie, as Moebius helped create the original heavy metal comic over in France. But I digress.
Unsurprisingly, the story ends with the surfer, as always, looking down on Earth completely and utterly alone. In order to teach humanity a lesson, the surfer gives up all his fame, all the love he has been awarded. He wants to help humanity so bad, he does it in spite of himself. A true show of selflessness. Even though he has physically unlimited power, the surfer is really no closer to an answer than the rest of us. He can only give his and his writer's perspective through colorful pieces of art. Like any medium, comics cannot give you the answer to everything in your life. They can only give you insight into it. In all his time surfing the space waves, the Silver Surfer could never find an answer to existence. But he found some things that were pretty close. In 1980, Stan Lee, John Buscema, and Rudy Nebres teamed up for an 8-page story in Epic Illustrated, Marvel's attempt to get in on the magazine market. Thanks to Bronze Age Babies, where I found this information, by the way. The story, called The Answer, follows our well-polished protagonist's search for no less than the meaning of life. Galactus insists there is no answer. In a rare moment of humility, Galactus states that even he is not God, and that searching for the answer is pointless. The surfer simply cannot accept this, so he decides to head to the farthest reaches of space and time, where he finds a black hole. And like any good surfer does, he travels through the mystical barrier and experiences the face-melting reality of the indescribable, only to appear right back where he started, next to Galactus. Confused, the surfer begins to realize that he tried to find something that doesn't really exist. Galactus mentions that the answer has always been with us, chronicled since the dawn of time. The two share one final panel, and the surfer reasons that the answer must lie within us. It's not necessarily common to see a comic dive so completely into the philosophy of life like this, but both Stan Lee and Jack Kirby knew the surfer had something no other hero had: a sense of mysticism and curiosity. In that way, the duo knew he was different from any of the other hundreds of characters they'd created. Under that precious power cosmic casing is a chunk of Stan Lee, a lot of Jack Kirby, and a good helping of the reader. The surfer is this being with immeasurable power, out in the nothingness of space, moving at a speed so incomprehensible, it defies time itself. He explores the vast universe and gazes from above, wondering what he'll learn next from each of these alien worlds. In other words, he's the perfect tour guide for the watchers of the Marvel Universe. You.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to visit my Patreon for behind the scenes images, stuff of that sort. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video, hopefully.